And let me start by saying this clearly, because many of you need to hear it today. If you have few friends or no friends at all, you are not broken. You are not weak, and you are not failing at life. In a world that measures worth by followers, likes, and social circles, being alone can feel like a defect. But I'm not here to comfort you with lies. I'm here to give you the truth. And the truth is this: solitude does not mean something is wrong with you. Often, it means something is right. Some of the strongest people you will ever meet walk alone. Not because they can't connect, but because they refuse to lower their standards just to feel accepted. You see, everyone wants to belong, but not everyone is willing to stay true to themselves. And if you don't fit into shallow conversations, fake smiles, and meaningless relationships, that's not a weakness. That's awareness. That's growth. And that's you realizing your time and energy are valuable. Being alone forces you to face yourself. No distractions, no noise, just you and your thoughts. And that scares people. Most people stay busy, stay surrounded, stay loud, because silence exposes who they really are. But if you're alone, learning yourself, and building yourself, improving quietly, you're already ahead. You're developing independence, emotional strength, and self-respect, and these are qualities that crowds cannot give you. Understand this: real connections are rare, and rare things take time. Having fewer friends often means you're selective, and it means you don't give access to everyone, and that's powerful. Quality will always beat quantity, and one real connection is worth more than a room full of people who disappear when life gets hard. There will be moments when loneliness hurts. I won't deny that. But loneliness is not a life sentence, it's a season. A season meant to sharpen you, not shame you. Use this time to build skills, discipline, confidence, and purpose, and become someone who doesn't need approval to feel whole. When you do that, the right people don't just appear, they recognize you. Being alone does not mean being broken, and this is one of the hardest truths to accept in a world obsessed with validation. From a young age, we are conditioned to believe that popularity equals worth, and that having many friends means you are doing something right, and that being alone must mean something is wrong. But pause for a moment and ask yourself an honest question. And since when did noise become proof of value? Since when did numbers replace depth? The reality is, many people surround themselves with others, not because they are fulfilled, but because they are afraid. Afraid of silence, afraid of facing themselves, and afraid of standing on their own. If you can sit alone without feeling empty, that is not a flaw, that is strength most people never develop. And here's the uncomfortable truth: no one likes to say out loud fitting in is easy, but being authentic is expensive. It costs you comfort, it costs you approval, and it costs you company. When you choose to be real instead of agreeable, your circle naturally becomes smaller. Not everyone can handle honesty, depth, or growth, and some people only connect over distractions, gossip, or shared excuses. When you don't resonate with that, you start to feel out of place, not because you are broken, but because you are evolving. And evolution is lonely before it becomes powerful. Think about this: if being surrounded by people automatically made someone happy and confident or successful, then the most social people would also be the most fulfilled. But that's rarely the case. You've seen it yourself, and people with large circles who still feel empty, people constantly laughing who silently struggle, people always busy, socially yet deeply dissatisfied. Why? And because connection without alignment drains you. Being alone, on the other hand, gives you space to align with yourself. It forces clarity. It removes the mask, and once the mask is gone, growth begins. There is a quiet confidence develops when you stop needing others to confirm your worth, and when you wake up not waiting for messages, not chasing invitations, not adjusting your personality to be accepted. Something shifts inside you. You begin to trust yourself, and you start listening to your own voice instead of the crowd's opinion. That independence becomes your backbone. And here's the hook most people miss: the strongest people are not those who are always surrounded, but those who are complete whether alone or with others. Being alone also reveals something critical, and you discover what you truly value. Without constant social influence, your decisions become intentional. Your goals become clearer. Your standards rise, and you stop tolerating disrespect, shallow conversations, and one-sided effort. And yes, that means fewer people stick around. But ask yourself this: would you rather feel lonely around people or peaceful by yourself? One drains you every day. The other builds you quietly, and there is nothing broken about choosing peace over popularity, depth over distraction, and self-respect over forced belonging. In fact, and it takes courage to walk alone in a world that pressures you to blend in. It takes discipline to resist filling your life with people just to avoid temporary discomfort. And most people never develop that courage. They settle for company instead of connection. You didn't. And that difference matters. And if you're listening to this and feeling seen, understand this clearly: a solitude is not a sign of failure. It's a signal, and a signal that you're outgrowing environments that no longer serve you. A signal that your standards are higher than average, and a signal that you are building something internally before inviting others into it. That process may feel heavy at times, but it is shaping resilience, clarity, and self-worth. And those qualities cannot be borrowed from anyone else, they must be earned alone. Having few friends often means you have higher standards, and that reality makes many people uncomfortable. We live in a culture that celebrates being accessible, agreeable, and constantly available. The more people you know, and the more liked you appear, and the more acceptable you seem to the world. But here's the question most people avoid: liked by whom, and at what cost? And when you raise your standards, you stop allowing everyone access to your time, your energy, and your mindset, and that decision alone will dramatically reduce the number of people who remain in your life. And that is not loss, it is filtration. And most people don't choose their circles consciously. They keep relationships out of habit, convenience, or fear of being alone. And they tolerate disrespect because it feels safer than emptiness. They accept shallow connections because depth requires effort and honesty. And when you decide that your life deserves more than surface-level interaction, you immediately step out of the average. You begin to ask different questions. And does this connection add value? Does this person respect my boundaries? Do they support my growth? Or do they only feel comfortable when I stay the same? And those questions don't make you arrogant, they make you intentional. Here's the hook no one prepares you for. And raising your standards will make you misunderstood before it makes you respected. People will call you distant, selective, or difficult, and simply because you no longer tolerate what you once accepted. But growth has a way of exposing mismatches. When your mindset evolves, not everyone can evolve with you, and some people benefit from your old version, the one who overgave, over-explained, and overlooked red flags just to keep the peace. When that version disappears, and so do many relationships, and that silence you're left with. That's not rejection, it's alignment correcting itself. High standards are not about perfection, and they are about protection. You are protecting your mental health, your focus, and your future. Every interaction costs something: attention, emotional energy, time. And if you give those resources to the wrong people, you pay for it later in frustration, self-doubt, and burnout. And people with low standards feel busy and connected but often feel drained. People with high standards may feel alone at times, but they feel clear, grounded, and in control. And that trade-off is not weakness, it's wisdom. There is also a quiet confidence that comes with being selective, and you stop explaining yourself to people who don't understand your vision. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop entertaining conversations that go nowhere. And yes, your circle gets smaller, but it also gets stronger. The fewer people you allow in, the more intentional each connection becomes, and you no longer bond over boredom or convenience. You bond over values, discipline, and purpose. That kind of connection is rare, and rare things are never crowded. And another truth worth confronting is this: not everyone deserves front-row access to your life. Some people belong in the audience, some backstage, and some not in the building at all. When you lack standards, everyone gets the same access. When you develop standards, access is earned. That shift changes everything, and you stop being reactive and start being deliberate. You stop chasing people and start choosing alignment. And that choice often looks like loneliness to outsiders, but internally, it feels like peace. If you find yourself with fewer friends as your standards rise, don't rush to fill the space. That space is working for you, and it's refining your discernment. It's teaching you the difference between attention and respect, between familiarity and loyalty. And the right people don't get scared off by standards, they're drawn to them. And when those people enter your life, they don't bring noise, they bring stability. Until then, and your selectiveness is not a flaw. It is evidence that you value your life enough to protect it. Solitude builds strength in ways constant company never can, and that idea challenges almost everything society teaches us about success and happiness. We are told that confidence comes from support, and that motivation comes from encouragement, and that strength is something borrowed from others. But real strength is not handed to you in a crowd, and it is forged when no one is watching. When you are alone, there is no applause to chase, no opinions to lean on, and no distractions to hide behind, and there is only responsibility. And responsibility is the birthplace of strength. Here's the hook most people aren't ready for, and the moment you are left alone is the moment your excuses lose power. You can no longer blame circumstances, people, or lack of support. Your progress becomes personal, and your discipline becomes necessary. Solitude removes the comfort of external motivation and replaces it with internal drive. That transition is uncomfortable and even painful at times, but it is also transformative. You stop waiting to be pushed and start pulling yourself forward. When you spend time alone and you are forced to confront your habits, your fears, and your inconsistencies. In company, it is easy to stay distracted, to laugh things off, to postpone self-improvement. And alone, there is no escape from truth. You notice where you waste time. You recognize the patterns holding you back, and you become aware of the gaps between who you are and who you want to be. That awareness is not gentle, but it is powerful. It gives you clarity, and clarity is the foundation of discipline. Discipline grows fastest in solitude because there are fewer voices competing for your attention, and no one is telling you what to think, how to act, or what direction to follow. You begin to set your own standards instead of adjusting to others' expectations, and you wake up and decide your priorities without negotiation. You learn to keep promises to yourself because no one else is there to remind you, and each small act of consistency, showing up, staying focused, finishing what you start, adds weight to your character. Over time, and that weight becomes confidence that cannot be shaken by opinion or rejection. There is also emotional strength that develops when you learn to sit with yourself, and many people avoid solitude because it exposes unresolved emotions. Being alone means feeling discomfort without immediately numbing it, but that process teaches emotional control. You learn that feelings don't have to dictate your actions. You learn patience with yourself, and you learn how to self-regulate instead of seeking reassurance. That ability to remain steady, even in silence, is a rare form of strength, and it allows you to stay calm under pressure and grounded during uncertainty. Solitude also sharpens independence. You stop outsourcing your motivation, your happiness, and your validation. You begin solving your own problems. You learn to think critically, to plan strategically, and to act decisively. And this independence changes how you move in the world. You are no longer desperate for approval or afraid of standing alone in your opinions. When challenges arise, and you don't panic, you adapt. That adaptability is strength in its most practical form. What many people fail to realize is that solitude doesn't isolate you from growth, and it accelerates it. Every hour spent alone building skills, refining your mindset, and strengthening your discipline compounds over time. And while others are distracted by constant stimulation, you are sharpening your focus. While others seek comfort in numbers, you are developing resilience. And that resilience shows up later, in leadership, in relationships, in pressure-filled moments where weak foundations collapse. If solitude feels heavy right now, and that's because it's doing its job, strength is not built in comfort. It is built in repetition, reflection, and responsibility. And walking alone for a season doesn't mean you're falling behind. It means you're training without spectators. And when the time comes to step forward, the strength you built in silence will speak louder than any crowd ever could. Silence is where real growth happens, and even though most people spend their entire lives running from it, we live in an age of constant noise, notifications, opinions, entertainment, and endless comparison. And noise feels productive. Noise feels connected. But here's the hook that challenges everything you've been told: noise keeps you busy, silence makes you better. And when the world finally quiets down, and there is no one left to impress, distract, or perform for, you are forced into the most honest environment possible. And honesty is the starting point of growth. Silence removes the external influence it shapes most people's decisions. Without constant input, and you begin to notice how much of your thinking was never really yours. You hear your own thoughts clearly, sometimes for the first time. That can be uncomfortable and even intimidating because silence exposes contradictions. It reveals the gap between what you say you want and what you actually do. But that exposure is necessary, and growth cannot happen where there is constant distraction. It requires space, and silence creates that space. In silence, self-awareness sharpens, and you start reflecting instead of reacting. Instead of responding impulsively to every emotion or opinion, you pause. You analyze. You gain control. And this is where maturity develops. Most people confuse activity with progress, but true progress often looks quiet from the outside. It looks like thinking before speaking, and listening before acting, and planning before moving. Silence trains you to be deliberate, and deliberateness is a powerful advantage in a world addicted to speed. And there is also a discipline that emerges when you are comfortable with silence. You stop filling every moment with stimulation. You become okay with boredom, and surprisingly, is a gateway to creativity and focus. When your mind is no longer constantly entertained, it begins to work. Ideas surface. Priorities become clear, and you start asking deeper questions about your direction, your values, and your future. That internal dialogue, uninterrupted and unfiltered, is where transformation begins. And here's another hook: most people overlook silence makes you dangerous in the best way possible. When you move quietly, people underestimate you, and while others announce their plans, complain loudly, or seek attention, you are building in private. You are refining skills, strengthening discipline, and correcting weaknesses without broadcasting the process. That quiet preparation creates shock later, not because you suddenly changed, but because no one was paying attention while you were doing the work. Silence also teaches emotional mastery. Without constant reassurance or external validation, you learn to sit with your emotions rather than escape them. You feel discomfort without immediately reacting. You learn the difference between impulse and intention, and over time, this builds emotional resilience. You become less reactive, less defensive, and more stable. In difficult situations where others panic or over-explain, and you remain calm. That calmness is not accidental, it is trained in silence. Another powerful effect of silence is clarity of direction. When you remove outside noise and you stop chasing goals that were never truly yours. You stop measuring success by other people's timelines. You begin defining success on your own terms, and that clarity prevents wasted effort. It helps you say no to distractions that look attractive but lead nowhere. And silence simplifies your path by eliminating what doesn't matter. Many people fear silence because it feels like emptiness, but it is actually potential, and it is unshaped space waiting for intention. Growth doesn't need applause, it needs consistency, reflection, and focus. Silence provides all three, and if your journey feels quiet right now, if no one is noticing, if nothing seems to be happening on the surface, understand this: silence is not stagnation, and it is preparation. It is the invisible phase where foundations are built strong enough to carry what comes next. Quality always beats quantity, and yet this truth feels uncomfortable in a world that glorifies numbers. We are taught to believe that more friends mean more support, more happiness, more security, but here's the hook: most people ignore numbers look impressive from the outside, but they mean nothing when life applies pressure. When things are easy, and crowds gather naturally. When things get hard, only quality remains. And that is where the real difference reveals itself. Many people confuse familiarity with loyalty, and just because someone is around doesn't mean they are invested. Just because someone laughs with you doesn't mean they will stand with you. And quantity creates the illusion of strength, but quality creates actual strength. One person who understands you, respects you, and supports your growth is more powerful than 10 people who only show up when it's convenient. This isn't negativity, it's realism. And life doesn't test relationships in comfort. It tests them in conflict, loss, and pressure. Here's a reality check that acts as a hook for anyone listening. And when your life changes, most of your circle will change too. Not because you did something wrong, but because many connections are built on sameness, not support. And when you grow, elevate your standards, or pursue something bigger, quantity disappears. And what's left behind is quality. That's not something to fear, and it's something to respect. It shows you who is aligned with your future, not just your past. Quality relationships demand more from you, but they also give more back, and they require honesty instead of performance. They require boundaries instead of people-pleasing. They require effort instead of convenience. That's why they are rare, and most people don't want deep connections, they want easy ones. They want company without commitment, attention without accountability. When you prioritize quality and you automatically step out of that mindset, you stop entertaining relationships that drain you, distract you, or diminish your self-worth. And there is also emotional safety in quality connections that quantity can never provide. With the right people, you don't have to explain yourself constantly, and you don't have to prove your value. You don't have to compete for attention. That sense of ease is not accidental, it's built on trust, respect, and shared values, and those qualities take time to develop. They cannot exist in large numbers because they require presence, not popularity. Another hook worth paying attention to is this, and the more people you try to keep happy, the more disconnected you become from yourself. When your energy is spread too thin, nothing receives your best, and quantity forces compromise of time, of values, of focus. Quality allows alignment. You can show up fully because you're not stretched in every direction, and that alignment strengthens your identity. You become more grounded, more confident, and more selective, not out of ego, but out of clarity. And quality also protects your growth. The wrong people can slow you down faster than no people at all. Constant negativity, comparison, or complacency quietly shapes your mindset. Over time, you begin to shrink your ambitions just to fit in. Quality connections do the opposite, and they challenge you without competing with you. They support your progress without feeling threatened by it. They hold you accountable without controlling you, and that kind of influence is priceless, and it cannot be found in large numbers. If your circle is small, it doesn't mean your life is empty, and it means your life is intentional. It means you've chosen depth over distraction, alignment over approval, and stability over noise. Quantity may impress strangers, but quality builds futures. And in moments when everything else falls away, it will never be the number of people around you that matters. It will be the right ones. And this season of loneliness is preparation, even though it rarely feels that way while you're living through it. When people experience isolation, their first instinct is to assume something has gone wrong, that they are being left behind while others move forward. But here's the hook most people miss, and life doesn't remove people from your path to punish you. It removes them to position you. Preparation often looks like emptiness before it looks like progress, and that misunderstanding causes many people to abandon the very phase that was meant to build them. Loneliness strips life down to its essentials, and without constant interaction, distraction, or validation, you are left with yourself and your direction. That can feel heavy, even unsettling, and because there is no one to lean on emotionally or mentally. But that weight is not random. It is resistance. And resistance is what strengthens muscles, sharpens focus, and builds endurance. When support is limited, self-reliance increases. When encouragement is quiet, internal belief has to speak louder. This is not abandonment, and this is training. There is a reason preparation happens in isolation. Growth requires concentration, and concentration requires fewer voices. And when too many opinions surround you, your own voice becomes difficult to hear. In this season, you are learning how to think independently, and how to make decisions without consensus, and how to trust your judgment without approval. These are leadership skills, whether you realize it or not. And leaders are not formed in crowds, they are formed in moments where responsibility cannot be shared. Here's another hook worth sitting with, and loneliness is often the price of becoming different. If you are building discipline, raising standards, or aiming higher than your environment, separation is inevitable. And not everyone can walk at your pace, and not everyone should. This space you're in is creating distance between who you were and who you're becoming. And that distance is uncomfortable, but it's necessary. Without it, transformation would never fully take place. Preparation also refines patience. And when results are slow and companionship is limited, you learn to endure without immediate reward. You stop relying on motivation and start relying on commitment, and you show up even when no one notices. You continue even when there is no applause. That quiet consistency is what separates temporary success from lasting strength, and anyone can perform when supported. Few can persist when unseen. This season teaches you how to carry emotional weight without collapsing under it, and you learn to process disappointment without projecting it onto others. You learn to sit with uncertainty without panicking. You learn that discomfort is not an emergency, and it is information. That emotional control becomes invaluable later when pressure increases and responsibilities multiply. And people who were never alone often crumble when life gets quiet. You are learning how to remain steady in that quiet. And another overlooked aspect of this preparation is clarity of alignment. Loneliness reveals what truly matters to you. Without social influence, your values become clearer, and you stop chasing what looks good and start focusing on what feels right. That clarity saves years of wasted effort, and it prevents you from building a life based on borrowed goals or borrowed expectations. When the right people eventually enter your life, and they won't distract you from your purpose, they'll complement it. This season is not meant to last forever, but it is meant to leave a mark. It is shaping discipline and independence, emotional resilience, and self-trust. These qualities cannot be rushed and cannot be taught through comfort. They are earned through quiet persistence. And if you are feeling isolated right now, understand this deeply: you are not being delayed, and you are not being forgotten, and you are being prepared for a level of responsibility, clarity, and strength that requires solitude before it can sustain connection. So if today you're walking alone, and lift your head, you are not behind, you are not broken, you are becoming. Stay focused, stay authentic, keep growing in silence, because one day, and you won't be looking for friends, you'll be choosing them. And by then, you'll understand something most people never do. Being alone was never your weakness, and it was your foundation.